All right, welcome to semester 2, week 1 of English 11. The very first day, we have a regular full week. I'll meet Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. The very first day on our All Meet Monday is going to be a lot of review slash reminders. I counted and I am getting approximately 30 new students between all of my classes, like as in students that I did not have last semester. So I'm going to be doing a lot of review today, the first day, about what class is like, how I run it. And for those of you that had me last semester, this is just a good reminder. So we'll do a Kahoot in class, and then we'll talk about this stuff. So this is kind of an overview as to how I run my class, why I teach. You are my reason. I would not do this job if it wasn't for you. I love my students, and I'm very grateful to have you. These are my teaching philosophy points. Please focus on learning and not just having the right answer, taking care of yourself mentally, emotionally, physically, approaching new things with a growth mindset, and just always putting your best foot forward and giving your best effort, because that's all I can expect from you at the end of the day. So one thing that we do at the start of every class is attendance questions. This is how I take attendance. Our main assignment every week will be weekly Google Slides. Sometimes we will not have slides to do. That kind of depends on what the plan is and how things are going to happen. If there's ever a week where we don't have slides, it's because of one of two things. It's either a work week and we're working on some sort of project, or it's because we're doing a lot of interactive activities. If you need to borrow one of my 2 Chromebooks in class, please check it out. Use this checkout sheet because it helps me keep track of who borrowed it when. For homework, I rarely ever give it to you. If you have homework, it's usually because you didn't use your time wisely in class or maybe some other reason, but whatever the case, you pretty much won't have homework in this class. And if you do and you feel overwhelmed, please talk to me. I feel like I did a pretty good job of holding myself to this last semester. This is my 4 p.m. policy, just meaning that after school during the week and then on weekends, I try not to answer my email or look at it. So if you can let me know something ahead of time as much as possible, please do that. I understand sometimes things come up. You can also check the office hours poster in my door window to see when I'm available. If you are watching this video, it's because you found this link on Canvas. This is the I was absent, what did I miss? So every week I record a video just like I'm doing now, going over what we do in the slides. So if you're sick, you're gone, something happens, you can watch that and get caught up. Every class period except for Mondays, I will give you 2 5-minute breaks, one in the middle of class and then one at the very end. This list are the things that you can do when you are on your break. Several times throughout the semester, I like to do check-ins. This usually will happen if we're working on a project or we're ending one 6-week grading period and going into another. You'll have at least one opportunity to do this with me, but I'm kind of hoping and planning to do it at least 3 times. For grades, this is how I do grades. It's proficiency-based grading, so 3 is proficient. And then if you're wanting honors credit, I would suggest aiming for a 4 to challenge yourself. Here's the breakdown of the percentages. So summatives, which would be like big projects, big essays, things like that. Reading and writing, those will both be 30% of your grade individually, so 60% total. And then for formative writing and reading, it's 20%, which is 40% total. Formatives would be like our weekly Google Slides, smaller assignments that we have. And then this is the breakdown of the percentage. So please take note of this. I'm going to be giving everybody a syllabus that you can take home with you. It's a paper copy. It's also online. 80 to 100% is an A. 79 to 60% is a B. I know those percentages look off, but it's how I do it. And I feel like it's more fair and equitable to you. So if you are concerned about your grade, make sure you double check this before you come talk to me, because odds are your grade's probably higher than you think it is. Cell phones, please put it away. That's as simple as I can make it. Unless we're on a break or unless I tell you that you need it for like a Kahoot or something, please just put it away. It's disrespectful to have it out because I work really hard to make this class fun and engaging. And when I see a phone out, it's just it's annoying and it's frustrating. So please put it away. I really don't care if you eat in my classroom. Just please clean up after yourself and don't distract anybody else from your learning or their learning. Late work policy, this is important. Every 6 weeks is a locked box, which means when we move from 1 6 weeks into another, whatever was due in that prior 6 weeks, I will not be touching unless you have like an actual valid reason to come talk to me. Maybe something pretty significant happened within your home life. Maybe you got super sick, whatever it is, come talk to me. But other than that, I will only be accepting work that's within the current 6 weeks that we're in. Participation, just please participate. It's going to make class way more fun for you. You're going to learn a lot better, and it'll just create a much better environment. So for embedded honors, if you're unfamiliar, I'm hoping that if you didn't have me last semester, that your English teacher communicated this well to you. The English department does a top-down approach, which means we treat the class like it's an honors level class. So if you are choosing not to do honors, because that is still an option for you, it just means that at the end of the semester, your grade will be bumped up 1. So you need to communicate that to me and tell me ahead of time if that is what you would like to do. Okay, we are now in this part of the video heading into what would be Tuesday or Wednesday, depending on what period you have me. We are going to be starting The Great Gatsby. This is a novel by F. Scott Fitzgerald. It was written and set in the 1920s, so it's literally 100 years old, but you will love this book. I have had so many students in the past tell me that they loved it. They thought it was super interesting. The story is kind of like a murder mystery. There's lots of parties that happen in the story. It's a very interesting story with very interesting characters, and I think you're gonna like it, even if you're not one to read super old books. So some people have lots of prior knowledge. Some people have seen the movie before but haven't read the book. Some people don't even know what this is. Maybe you've never heard of this in your whole life. I just want you to tell me right now in this little box, what do you know about the story of The Great Gatsby? Literally anything and everything. Just tell me what you know, because that'll help me kind of see where we're at. Okay, in class, we're going to be doing a gallery walk. I'm going to have some pictures up around the room, and this will be an opportunity for you to try to make some inferences and guesses based off of what we see around the room. And then we will take a look at the trailer for the movie. We will be watching the movie, but we won't be watching it at the end of the book. We'll be watching it as we read the book. So let me introduce you to the characters. We have Jay Gatsby. He's kind of our main character. Daisy Buchanan and Tom Buchanan. These two are married. Nick Carraway is the narrator, and I would say kind of a secondary main character because he's the one that's telling the story. He is cousins with Daisy. And then we've got Jordan Baker, who is Daisy's best friend, and then George and Myrtle Wilson. They are married, and you'll find out are involved with Tom in a not so appropriate way. Here is a picture of the map. This will show you, because they're going to talk about how they look across the bay and they see the green light in this person's house, and they have to travel through the Valley of Ashes. So Gatsby lives here. Nick is his neighbor. He lives right here. And they, in order to get to the Buchanan's house, have to go around through the Valley of Ashes and then go to the Buchanan's. But they live across this little bay. So as we are reading this book, we need to answer our essential question. It's kind of 2 parts, but mostly one. Is love enough? Is love enough to be content in life? That's going to be the question we are going to try to solve and answer by the end of this book. And as we read and analyze, we're going to be looking at 2 different things. We're going to be analyzing the text and then analyzing the film. With the text, we're going to look at symbolism and language and plot and themes and looking at our essential question. With the film, we're going to look at how is the novel portrayed through the medium of film and what specific choices did the director make that maybe were different than what the author put in the book or just portrayed it differently. So we're going to be comparing and contrasting. So how we're going to read is we are going to read in class. I'm never going to make you go home and read because that's not going to work for anybody. We are roughly going to be reading 1 chapter a week, splitting it up between Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. We are going to be using the audiobook, so you will have a physical copy of the book in front of you because I have a class set, and then we'll be listening and following along to the audiobook as it plays. So now we need to talk about some background context. because this book is 100 years old. The story itself was written and set 100 years ago, and life was very different. So, I'm going to give you a very brief history lesson. I am not a social studies teacher, so I did my best to research and to lay this all out in a way that makes sense. I believe that when you were freshmen, I think is when you took US history. So, some of this might be a review from then, but we're going to take a look at what did America look like in the 1920s. So here's the timeline quickly to show you kind of where we're at in the greater timeline of history. 1914 to 1918 was World War One. That was a massive, massive event that really impacted a lot of people, and it led us into the flourishing to 1920s, which is when The Great Gatsby takes place in 1922. 1929 to 1939 was really hard. It was the Great Depression. All the flourishing and the wealth that happened in the 20s collapsed and ended up being the Great Depression. And then we got ourselves out of the Great Depression by starting World War II from 1939 to 1945. So during the 1920s, the prohibition was alive and well. What was that? It was the 18th Amendment passed to ban the manufacture, transportation, and sale of intoxicating liquors, i.e., no alcohol was allowed anywhere. And this lasted from 1920 to 1933. So if our story takes place in 1922, we are roughly 2 years into this prohibition. There was a big economic boom, as I mentioned, with the 1920s. Post World War One, America was just thriving. There were lots of inventions that were being created to make life easier. There was much more time for leisure. The car, the motor vehicle, was created, and it gave people the ability to travel much farther than they would have in the past. And it also started the golden age of Hollywood. So the year is 1922. I did some research to kind of figure out some things to kind of really put into perspective what was around and what wasn't at this time. So air conditioning had only existed for 20 years, meaning not that long ago, if it was hot in summertime, you were melting. But you'll see in the novel and in the movie that air conditioning was kind of a thing for the wealthy. Not basically, if you weren't wealthy, you didn't have it. It was almost like it didn't exist at all. At this point, women had only been able to vote for 2 years, and that would be white women only. So, very different than what we have today. Traffic lights had only existed for 10 years, meaning before that, it was a lot of horse-drawn carriages, not a lot of pavement. There were no cars, so you got around that way, and they needed to invent traffic lights to help with traffic. The Ford Model T was invented 14 years prior. So this was 14 years sounds like a long time, but it's really not. Like, that's basically your whole life. Um, you know, Convertibles were brand new in 1922, which is super important. Keep that in mind for the story. The cheeseburger would not be invented until 2 years later, meaning at the time that the story was written, Jay Gatsby would never know what a cheeseburger was because it wasn't invented or created yet. Birth control pills were not invented, or they weren't invented or available for another 38 years, which definitely impacted life for women. TV wouldn't be invented for another 5 years, but it really wasn't common for another 30 years. So their form of entertainment was reading or like chatting with people. They didn't have TV or TikTok or anything like that. Walt Disney was 21 years old. He was a very, very young man and on his way very quickly to developing what we know as Disney today. Disneyland would not exist for another 33 years, however, much, much longer. Drake's grandparents would not be born for another 20 years. Drake is like in his 30s. His grandparents were not even close to being alive yet, roughly. The Portland Trailblazers would not exist for another 48 years. No such thing as the Blazers. Not at all. North Salem High School, which is the oldest high school in Salem Keizer, had actually been around for 16 years because it's that old. But West would not exist for another 80 years, which is like the amount of time that Captain America was frozen in ice before he was discovered, if you want to think about it like that. So, what we're going to do after this is you are going to take a look at this video. This is a crash course video on the Roaring Twenties to give us some more historical context. The reason I'm spending time doing this with you is because there's so much to this book that it'll help us understand things better if we can really get a good understanding of what life was like back then, because it's very different than what it is now. So you're going to answer these questions. What inventions changed the way that people lived? What changed the culture for women and how they lived? And what other things kind of stood out to you about the 20s and how they are different from today? We'll take a break after that, and then we are going to start reading chapter 1. So, if you are ever gone on a day that we are reading, which would be any day except for Monday, Mondays are going to be like a recap review day. Please make sure you come talk to me and I'll tell you where we're at to get you caught up. So, now we're talking about Thursday and Friday. To start off, we're going to do this kind of very interesting and fun writing prompt. You are going to rank these things. There's 14 of them. You can just literally copy and paste. You're going to rank them for you personally in terms of dating, pursuing, and finding love. What is the most important to you? Number 1 being the most important, number 14 being the least. You're going to take some time and rank them and just copy and paste them into these little boxes. And then after we have finished reading chapter 1, we're going to do some report cards to just kind of get us an understanding of what these characters are like so far. So you're going to give each character a grade for each trait, a grade meaning A, B, C, D, like a letter grade. And then explain your grade in the comments, like, using things from the text to help us. Like if you say that Nick has an A in kindness, well, why? How do you know that? And tell me right here. So you're going to do this for Nick, for Daisy, and for Tom. And then to recap and reflect on the whole report card prompt, you're going to tell me, in your opinion, so far, which character is the most likable and why, and then, in your opinion, which is the least likable and why. And I want you to give me some information from the text to prove that. And then we are going to end Thursday and Friday's class period by watching chapter 1 scenes. So we'll watch up until the point that we stopped reading the book, and then you're going to answer these questions. Consider the film director's choice to begin the movie with Nick speaking to a psychiatrist. What effect does this choice have on the story? Because it's very different than what happens in the book. And how does Nick feel and act during dinner with the Buchanans? Use details from the film to support your explanation. So that is all I've got for you for week 1. If you have any questions, please let me know.